David K. Johnston, everybody.
Hello, Mark.
Hello, sir. Thank you always for being here. I want to talk to you first about the lawyers. It's a kind of parade of Trump lawyers who seem to be, I'm going to use the word flipping because I've heard it used so much, but they're pleading. And then that's what I want to ask you is, so how much of those plea agreements are damning for the future of Donald Trump? Like what is actually a flip and a deal that might be made?
Well, the deal that's been made to each of these people is very simple. Prosecutor says to them, we've got you, and here's your choice. 15 years in a Georgia prison, or you get probation and a minor fine, and you have to testify in every single case we call upon you for, and you have to make an allocution to us, that is a statement of the facts that fully lays out what you know. And there is no attorney-client privilege here because of what's known as the crime fraud exception. Communications with your lawyer are confidential unless those communications are just a ruse to cover up criminal activity. So this is the three lawyers now. Sidney Powell, released the Kraken from Texas. Kenneth Chesborough, and now today Jenna Ellis have turned on Trump is very bad for him in that case. They will not be the last. There's also a bail bondsman who entered a guilty plea. I don't remember if he has a deal or any consequence. The problem with the other defendants in this case, where there are a total of 19 people, is if you're going to go and turn state's evidence, you need to get in there early. Because at some point, the prosecutor will say, well, Mr. Thompson, you know, you're the next to last person or the fourth from last person. We don't need you anymore. So you can plead guilty or you can go to trial. We don't care. These lawyers have given what I'm sure are very detailed and damning statements to Trump about what went on when he was talking to them, because Donald's always operated on this theory that he can talk openly to his lawyers because of attorney-client privilege. So
now to this, I wanted just to run this, and I was kind of waiting. The most recent one is this Jenna Ellis, and she did it kind of emotionally. You know, she flipped. Can you play a little bit for David, please, Tony?
For me.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information.
Everybody's blaming the lawyers, the other lawyers.
Especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states. What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true.
Yeah, those other
lawyers.
In
the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election in several states, including Georgia, I failed to do my due diligence. I believe in and I value election integrity. If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse. For those failures of mine, Your Honor, I have taken responsibility already before the Colorado bar who censured me, and I now take responsibility before this court and apologize to the people.
So, you know, there she is. She's blaming it. They're all just pointing the fingers at the other lawyers. If he had told me, if she had told me, I didn't know, there's no way I would have done it. It seems so clear. But David, please speak to it. And
well, first of all, let's just address the most basic element here, which is, you know, this is a woman who's 38 years old. So this "I didn't know" defense is nonsense. Might work if you graduated from law school at 21, which would be unusual, and you were naive. But this doesn't, you know, this isn't here. She was what the law calls willfully blind. And secondly, but she says she's a Christian, which may or may not be true. She asserts it. And I bring that up because Donald, goes around asserting he's a Christian, even though he says his life philosophy is revenge. And he's in one of his books, Think Big, he spends 6 pages calling Christians fools, idiots, schmucks, and generally denouncing them. But it has nothing to do with this case, and is just part of an effort to sort of, oh, poor me, I was another victim here. No, you're a criminal, and you have admitted to being a criminal, and you may lose your law license over this. The important element to understand in all this, Mark, is that the RICO law in Georgia, many states have RICO laws, racketeering enterprise laws, is a version of conspiracy law. And conspiracy law is intended to get prosecutors the tools to break up the conspiracy and get people to rat each other out. And unless, you're willing to spend years in a Georgia, not just a prison, a Georgia prison for Donald Trump, you're an idiot if your lawyers haven't been at the Fani Willis's door trying to make a deal from day one. And we could well end up in this case at the end of the day with 18 guilty pleas and Donald Trump on trial.
Yeah, I mean, as you've just articulated it, it sounds as though that would be the smartest thing for any of these people to do.
Every single one of them. I don't know that Rudy can get out of being prosecuted, Rudy Giuliani. They may not be willing to give him a deal. And I don't know how reliable a witness he'll be given his drinking problems that have been well known for a long, long time.
David, let me just stop you there and ask you, because he's the head of the spear, is that why they wouldn't give him a deal? Why not?
Yeah, it will depend entirely on whether Giuliani is incredibly crucial and useful in getting Trump convicted. And if they're concerned at all and they need to buttress their case more, then he'll get some kind of a deal. But he's not going to get probation. He's not going to get the same kind of walk. And remember, he's already facing disbarment in, I believe it's D.C. and New York State. He's got these other cases against him. The woman who agreed to work for him for $2 million, and he kept not paying her, and he kept telling her, if you don't sleep with me, and these incredibly crude tapes that have come out, almost, what 13-year-old boys think about women, sort of tape. He doesn't have any money to pay her, he says. So it'll be interesting to see. Giuliani will be the key person to watch among the other conspirators, whether he can get a deal. And if he gets a deal, what it tells you is he's got tape recordings or memos or something that is so devastating to Trump that it was worth the price of letting him, if not walk, come pretty close to taking a walk.
I see. That's interesting, because you'll get everything you want on Giuliani and Trump through Ellis, who has firsthand knowledge of all those conversations.
Well, Ellis and Chesbrough
and Powell, probably.
Now, Donald, the other night, I think it was the night before last in New Hampshire, asserted that Sidney Powell was never his lawyer. That's an interesting observation. He was going to make her a special attorney general by appointment. And secondly, he asserted that he's never been indicted. And all of this is evidence of how Donald is just cracking up in front of us, because he has there's just nothing inside Donald. He's just this empty vessel. And you can't fill the holes in him no matter what you do. Donald has never known a day of happiness or contentment in his life. And his family are also becoming more unhinged. Eric, the second son, put up an item on Truth Social yesterday or the day before that said, the Biden people want to take away our 30-round magazines. He's talking about magazines for guns like AR-15s. So you need to stock up, and it's not for target hunting. Well, that's a pretty clear threat against people. And Donald may be more muted about his threats because he's got 2 different judges who've indicated that they're going to take action against him if he continues this, especially going after people like, the judge in the New York State civil cases clerk.
Right. You actually, in your book, I don't remember which book it was either, but you've got such great books on Trump, and there are a bunch of stories and a bunch of, that's what I always tell people.
I can't remember what's in which book. So.
You can needle drop, I've said it before, but I'll tell you, you can needle drop the David K. Johnston books. Just crack it open wherever you want and start on one of these Trump books. And there's a great story about Trump, lurching across the table and grabbing someone in some negotiation. I mean, it's just, as you say, it's all id with him,
Yeah, and the unfortunate part of all this is that because of Judge Eileen Cannon, the only judge Trump has not attacked, the judge he appointed, the judge who is at best minimally qualified.
The document case judge in Florida.
That's the case that really should go first, because if there's ever been a slam dunk case, that's it. People have gone to jail over a single piece of paper of the kind that Donald had boxes and boxes of, and lied about, had his lawyers lie about. But very clearly, this judge is trying to protect him. And after her initial stupid move, and I say that word intentionally, stupid, where she said as president, he deserves special treatment. No, not in America. Nobody gets special treatment under the law. And a judge who said that has violated their oath of office right out of the box. She hasn't made a mistake of that league since. Boy, I wish she would make a mistake so they could get a different judge, because that case isn't even going to be hard to try or take very long to try, because it's so absolutely crystal clear.
Now that the revelations that are on top of the other revelations, I guess they just sort of buttress the basic revelations of him sharing those documents and information. It's just all so disheartening. The 60 Minutes Australia piece in which that billionaire is talking essentially about Trump's style and his braggadocio associated with, sharing information. He was, part of him, I sense, David, is sort of just showing off on this is on the documents thing. And part of him is looking for real remuneration of some kind.
Yeah. Well, first of all, he may well have been hoping to get some kind of contractual relationship with people around Chris Pratt, not the actor, but the Australian billionaire. The U.S. is now going to build the next submarines for the Australians rather than the French. And so, the prospect of getting paid a fee somewhere certainly would be in Donald's mind, since he's always on the hunt for money. I also think it would be a terrible mistake to think that this is the only time Donald gave national security secrets away by shooting his mouth off to impress somebody. He's just the only case that we know about with absolute certainty. And, Donald is such a crude character. The news just came out at, I think it was at the Daily Beast, but maybe it was a Raw Story or somewhere else, that it was certainly in the New York Post, that Donald wanted Melania to parade herself around in a bikini for people to look at. This is just his junior high school maturity level.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, it's all it. There's just no sense of maturity at all. All right. So, David, I now want to segue to this dysfunctional GOP, unable to scrape together the votes for a leader. And help me, the leader of the party hasn't in the past been so defined by a political philosophy the way they're trying to define the speaker now. It seems like they're trying to check out so many boxes. It's like those people who are looking for the perfect boebfriend or girlfriend. You know what I mean? It just...
Yeah. Oh, this is a very much my way or the highway sort of group of people. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Boebert, Getz, that whole crowd, Gozer, they have no interest in negotiating or compromising with anything. They're not there to govern. They're there to be petulant children feeding the fantasies of people who, think we can get along without a government. And the vote for speaker is always on party lines. And the Democrats made a decision early on under Hakeem Jeffries, who is now the minority leader, that they were not going to bail out the Republicans. They were going to let them stew in their own juices. And the Republicans cannot get, despite having a nominal minority, they can't get to 217 votes for speaker. Now, one thing that may happen, I think it's highly unlikely, but it could happen, is speaker is elected based on the voting of those present. So if 5 Republicans were to call in sick or have to go visit their dying mother or whatever, Hakeem Jeffries could become Speaker. But that doesn't get you anywhere, because immediately there's going to be efforts to try and go after him and make life impossible. I think we're facing the prospect of a really serious period of time here without leadership in the House. And the Congress can't function if the House can't function. And by the way, don't forget that the Speaker does not have to be a member of the House. It always has been. But you could be Speaker. Anybody listening to this broadcast could be Speaker. The Constitution simply requires that there be a Speaker. And so long as you have the brat caucus, again, I'll go back to the junior high school folks caucus, they have no interest in governing. That's hard work. And by the way, how did Nancy Pelosi get all sorts of major legislation passed when she only had a 4-vote majority?
Yeah, she had an even lesser majority. 5. Yeah. And I always hear, I think I've uttered the adage, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. I don't think I can say that anymore. I mean, they can't get them to fall in line.
I think the old 1930s Will Rogers line now applies to Republicans. Rogers once said, "I don't belong to an organized party. I'm a Democrat." And I think it absolutely applies. And also, remember, there's no way the Republicans will be the majority in January 2025. The only reason they have their majority is that in New York State, where I live, in an act of unbelievable political malpractice, the New York State Democratic Party agreed to a redrawing of maps that gave an advantage to the Republicans, and they picked up 5 states in New York. Now, once you get away from metropolitan New York City, Albany, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, rural New York is pretty much, I guess Ithaca would be maybe the one exception, is pretty much Republican, and quite conservative Republican.
It's like California, away from the cities in California, the Central Valley and beyond.
You get to Reading, things are all different.
Yeah.
But there's no population in these places. And so the Democrats will pick up at least 1 seat in New York in the next election, the George Santos seat, and very good chance they're going to pick up 3, 4, 5, maybe more. And they're going to win some seats elsewhere in the country. And one of the reasons you're having trouble getting a speaker, by the way, is that there are 18 or 20 members of the House where Biden won their congressional district in 2020. That means there's a whole bunch more who Trump may have won, but by a thin margin. And all of those members, if they want to get reelected, have a very tough problem. Interestingly, we leave out of this whole debate, because I'm not seeing it anywhere, not the New Republic, which has been dramatically improved, or the New York Times or the Washington Post, that it's just a job to be elected to Congress. People died for this country. So if you don't get reelected, if you resign to do something else, it's not like that's a horrible tragedy, unless there's something about you that you can't do the right thing.
I also, just in the spirit of doing the right thing, can understand running for political office, which does take tremendous energy and resources and coalitions of voters. And then when you get there, just being committed to shutting the whole place down. Yeah. I mean, unless you, on essentially single issues, you know what I mean? Well, Ukraine or whatever.
The campaign finance system has driven a lot of good people out of politics. My wife was asked some years ago if our congressman were to leave, would she be interested in running for that seat? And she's not at all a political person. She's a charity person, but very deeply respected where we live. And, her head, she said, "Hey, by the way, I was asked about," and she was sort of, flattered. And I said, "Well, sweetheart, you realize that you would have to raise money from people whose behavior you can't stand, or you'd be a one-termer." And she looked at me and she said, "Oh my God, you're right. I couldn't do it, could I?" And I went, "No, because your sense of ethics wouldn't allow you to do it." We should think about that sort of thing. That is a horrible thing about our current political system. The post-Watergate financial reforms and the decisions of the Supreme Court, especially in Buckley, Vallejo, and then Citizens United, have created a monster
Yeah.
where the money rules, not policy, not what citizens want. And if you're a member of Congress, you know perfectly well your real constituents, they aren't the people in your district. They're the people who fund your campaign.
Sure.
By the way, there's a reform for this that I've long been in favor of. I should not be able to make a campaign contribution to a congressman where you live, and you shouldn't be able to make one where I live. Certainly not from outside the state in which you live, because we could have, instead of 53 members of Congress from California now, you could have 53 people running in a single district. But Congress needs to pass a law that you can only get campaign contributions from people who are in your district, and let the Supreme Court shoot it down. The principle should remain. There are all sorts of people in opensecrets.org where you can look and see that, they've raised 2% of the money or 6% of their money from people inside their district.
Yeah, it's the flaw that's now baked into the system.
We need to unbake it.
Yeah, exactly right. David, that's all the time we've got for today. I look forward to more. I mean, what's happening, as you say, it may be happening not in the order it should be, because maybe the document case should be first, but the Trump court cases are click-clacking along, and Cohen in the fraud case, which you've written so much about, the way that Trump has inflated properties and played insurance companies and played Deutsche Bank. Yeah, exactly. You've written chapter and verse literally on that. Cohen is laying that bare. Kim, you have anything before we say goodbye today?
Yeah, I kind of had two questions I wanted to ask. The first one is, do you think that all these attorneys who are flipping will be disbarred? And is that something that happens in the state in which they're all, carrying legal licenses, and that's not part of the current court cases? And the other question I have...
Let's deal with the first one first.
Okay, carry on.
Sidney Powell, I believe, is already facing disciplinary proceedings.
Eastman as well.
Yeah. Oh, John Eastman for sure. The guy I once debated, and he turned out to be an incredible lightweight. They're certainly going to face disciplinary action. I would hope every single one of them loses their license and loses their license in a way they can't get a license again. Yeah. But whether that'll actually happen for all of them, I don't know. It'll happen for Rudy for sure. Rudy will never be able to practice law. Not that at 79 years old and steeped in gin that it's going to matter. What was the other question?
The other question is, these three, Powell, Chesborough, and Ellis, they got a slap on the wrist. They got probation for 5-6 years, a $5,000-$6,000 fine, and then today Ellis got 100 hours of community service. And these, in my mind, are people that not only cheated the people of Georgia, but they cheated the entire American public by trying to steal an election. And they got a slap on the wrist. And I get that there's a bigger issue at hand. They're trying to get Trump. But if Trump doesn't end up in an orange jumpsuit going to jail, should we be mad as Americans that these people aren't really facing repercussions for such egregious crimes?
Well, the legal system is full of algebra and pricing. And the reality here is that these three people have devastating information that can help convict Trump. So they get a very good deal, a better deal than a perfect world would have. And it also tells you something very, very central to this, which is the real target here is Donald Trump. It's not the facilitators and enablers and the sideshow characters. It's stopping the leader of the criminal conspiracy. And so people get a walk. I mean, Sammy the Bull Gravano admitted to murdering 19 people, and he basically got a walk because he was such a valuable witness against John Gotti.
That says it so well, although I must say I'm kind of with Kim in that, there has to be a message sent that if you support the corrupt leader, you yourself could end up paying a real price. And I guess what she's saying is the price doesn't seem...
That's why I think disbarment is really important. The disciplinary actions need to be disbarment, and disbarment in a way that makes a record that you're not going to get to practice law again. You are out of that field. And I say this as somebody who, I write letters of recommendation for former students of mine. for legal positions, for admission to the bar, admission to law school, things like that, I think carefully about calibrating them. And the ones where I'm concerned about their ethics, I drop items in there that a good reader should be paying attention to.
We'll talk next week, David. Again, much going on. I look forward to our next conversation. David K. Johnston, everybody. Thank you, David. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.